Okay, now we're talking about the invertebrates, the coelomates, and the vertebrates. So we're talking about animals, basically, is what we're talking about right now. Basically, if they have a backbone, they're called what? They're called a vertebrate. If they don't have a backbone, they're called invertebrates. And if they have a true body cavity, do you know what that's called? It's called a coelom. Everybody say coelom. Animals that have it are called coelomates. Okay, listen just for a second. In the gastrula phase of a baby, when the blastula invaginates, right about the time it implants in the mother's uterus, I guess I'm talking about a human right now, there are 3 germ layers that form: the endoderm, the ectoderm, and the mesoderm. The mesoderm is the middle layer that forms the bones and the muscles. The ectoderm, skin, hair, nails, nerve system. And the endoderm is what forms the gut. Now, why am I saying that? The reason I'm saying that is the mesodermal layer is what defines a coelomate. If a critter has a body cavity that's completely lined by this embryonic layer, mesoderm, it's called a coelomate. If it's partially lined, it's called a pseudocoelomate. If it has no lining like that, it's called an acoelomate. And as we go through this, the acoelomate, the typical one would be the Planarian worm, and the pseudocoelomate would be an ascaris worm. It's a parasitic nematode. And then we would be great examples of coelomates. I want to talk just for a second about protostome versus deuterostome. In that invagination that I talked about a minute ago, the first invagination, if it becomes the mouth of the critter, it's called a protostome. They're talking about bugs and things like that right now. But in humans, the second invagination into that gastrula is what forms the mouth. So what are we called? We're not protostomes, we are deuterostomes. Deus means second, right? Stoma means mouth. Deuterostome, second mouth. That's what that means. Also, notice that evolutionists classify things according to symmetry. Look up. If you look at a human, we are only bilaterally symmetric. There's only one dividing mid-sagittal plane that you can get roughly equal halves. If you're talking about a pizza, it doesn't matter which way you cut it. You're going to get about the same story. That's radial symmetry. So that's another thing that is used a lot of times to help classify organisms. With the lowest organisms, these live in water, mostly marine. They're attached to rocks, shells, and other solid objects. What am I talking about? Sponges. These are called sponges. Some kind of evil sponge. All right, let's talk about, they have these collar cells that help create water currents that bring water through the sponge. What do you call these? It's kind of a weird name. It's called a choanocyte. Everybody say choanocyte. And these are the ones that help absorb nutrients. These are called amoebocytes. Everybody say that. Amoebocytes. These are in sponges. And they have spicules inside of them. So I notice that in SpongeBob, a lot of times they use Patrick to scrub the toilet. But the truth is, sponges have spicules too. So a sponge could be useful for scrubbing just as well. And we know that. But we also know that SpongeBob is a kitchen sponge and not a real ocean sponge. Which would probably hurt his feelings just a little bit if somebody said he wasn't real. They are sessile filter feeders. That means that they live on the bottom. They stay in one spot. They're not mobile. All right, the next thing I want to talk about are the jellyfish. What is the science word for a jellyfish, class? Well, the science word for a jellyfish is called a cnidarian. Everybody say cnidarian. So, okay, now I'll let you answer your question. Look up this phase of it is called what? Is it a medusa or a polyp? The one that goes through the water like that is a medusa. That's a standard jellyfish. But it also, a lot of these have a part of their life cycle where they're attached to the bottom. What is that phase called? It's called a polyp. Very good. Okay, let's talk about hydra just for a minute. These have tentacles around the mouth, but they have a gastrovascular cavity. Remember, this is kind of interesting because they digest their food in the same cavity that they absorb gases and things from the water to live. These are little tiny things. They also have nematocysts. If I was going to ask you what is a cnidocyte and nematocyst, what would be the common word to explain that? What is it? Everybody say stinging cell. Something that would sting you. Let's go to the animal floaters. Little tiny floaters in the ocean that serve as food for larger animals. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the zooplankton. Everybody say zooplankton. Okay. Next, I want to talk about the Planarian. These are the ones that you can cut them in half, and you know that this one will form a head and that one will form a tail. All this weird regeneration stuff. They have eye spots on them. They have a ladder-type nerve system, and they have flame cells, which are considered to be primitive kidneys or something like that. Next, let's talk about some parasitic worms called the tapeworms. What do you call the head part of a tapeworm? Scolex. It has hooks on it. It even sounds like it has hooks on it. Scolex. It really does. What do you call the little proglottids that can fall off in the feces, and that if a pig eats them, then it can form a whole new tapeworm? Everybody say proglottid. Everybody say proglottid. I need you to get bossy with this. Okay, remember that they're hermaphroditic. They have male and female structures in the same critter. Okay, let's talk about the ones that have no body cavity. Let's talk about the ones with no body cavity. What am I talking about? An acoelomate. Everybody say acoelomate. What about a body cavity incompletely lined with mesoderm? Pseudocoelomate. What do you call one that's completely lined with mesoderm? Very good. It's called a coelomate. All right, let's talk about mollusks for just a minute. They have a visceral mass, a foot, and a mantle. What is the part, or what would happen if a little piece of sand got hung between the mantle and the shell? Would something really bad happen? We're talking about a black pearl. Actually, maybe not a black one, it might be a white pearl. Beautiful pearls formed from problems created. That's what they say, danger. It means opportunity, right? So why can't I have a better thinking? I got stinking thinking. Mollusks, they take a bad thing and make it into something beautiful. So why can't I do the same thing? That is my question. I just need to do it. By the way, there's a great Shia LaBeouf segment on that. Just do it. I have to show you all that. That's cool. 1 minute. Shia LaBeouf. Shia, am I saying it now right? Shia. Okay, I always want to say Shia LaBeouf. You know, that's not cool. That was all wrong. Okay, let's talk about a clitellum right here. This is the anatomy part of an earthworm where they figure out where to match up with the mate. Kind of a weird deal. Remember, earthworms are hermaphroditic. One of them has to fertilize, the other one they have testes and ovaries inside of them. Interesting. I think the big thing that I like to talk about when I talk about an earthworm, even though it really doesn't talk about it a whole lot in here, is that it has a closed circulatory system. It's very advanced. It has 5 hearts in it. We already dissected that one. Let's go to this page right here. What do you call the fold that increases the intestine surface area? Yeah, say it louder. Typhlosil. Very good. Okay, now we're going to talk about the bugs. This literally means joint-footed. Jointed appendages and a hard exoskeleton. What am I talking about? I'm talking about an arthropod. These are some of our favorite food items, by the way. Awesomely delicious. I had some last night, some shrimp at the Red Lobster. Decapoda, by the way. 10 legs. Some of my favorite bugs. Let's talk about green glands right here. Let's talk about green glands. These are organs of excretion around the eyes of a crawdad. They have, that's really the main thing the thing about a crawdad that's so interesting is that they do have they have separate segments. They have a cephalothorax, they have an abdomen. You're starting to get segmentation, which you don't see in an earthworm. And you also have something called tagmata. They have specialized legs that are made for grabbing and eating, pinching, and then they have other ones for crawling along on the bottom. They breathe by gills under the water. That's pretty cool. In a female grasshopper, the ovipositor is the part that on their abdomen that they back into and lay eggs with that thing. That was what I was telling you about earlier when we talk about Hymenoptera. Hymenoptera have membrane-type wings and an ovipositor modified with this stinger. It's kind of weird that the name Hymenoptera for these yellow jackets doesn't say anything about the stinger, which is the business end of this thing. Those things laid down some heat on me. I'm just going to say that. What we have in a grasshopper, along the abdomen, we have holes along the abdomen. They're called spiracles. And these lead to the little trachea through which they breathe through their abdomen. Let's talk about echinoderms for just a minute. Let's talk about echinoderms. Echino means spiny, derma, skin. What am I talking about, y'all? Class Asteroidea, there's a hint. Asteroid. They are called these starfish. We're talking about Patrick. They have a water vascular system, an endoskeleton, and little tube sucker feet. Pretty dang cool. And they have a sieve plate on the top, a madreporite plate through which they pull water to give turgor pressure to their sucker feet. There are also digestive machines. Every arm in a starfish, we're going to see this in lab, is just filled with digestive glands. And then they have, in a disgusting way, they have this extrusible mouth. Look up for a second. They can use their feet to pull open a mollusk, and then they can extrude their mouth like a tube, kind of like some kind of alien creature in there, inject the digestive enzymes, and then suck out all of the good stuff. That's sick. That is sick. Let's talk about chordates. There are 4 things that the phylum Chordata have, and they are a dorsal tubular nerve cord. That means a nerve cord on the back. They have a notochord, which in us become our vertebrae. They have a post-anal tail, a tail behind the anus. Honestly, I would like to see a picture of a pre-anal tail. I don't know what that means. Pharyngeal pouches that are thought to become gill slits. In us, they just form parts of our jaw. So we are in the phylum Chordata. The urochordates are the sea squirts. They are the simplest types of chordates. And then there are the cephalochordates. The one that you'll see on tests at the end of this course in the classroom is the lancelet. It is a brachiostomaton. It's looks like a little pocket cone. There are critters in the phylum Vertebrata, and we are right about in here right now. And so if I had a cartilaginous fish, what kind of fish would I be talking about, class?
A shark.
A shark, right. What about a bony fish? That's just like a regular fish to us. We like bony fishes. We like to eat those. They're yummy. What about an amphibian? What would that be? A frog or something like that. What about a reptile? What's a great example of a reptile? A turtle or a snake or a lizard. I saw a beautiful skink today out in DeSoto County, blue lined on it and shot off before I got a chance to get a hold of it. True or false? They have feathers. They are warm-blooded. They're the only feathered, warm-blooded creature. What are they called? They're called birds. That was not a true or false question, was it? Started out in my mind as a true or false question. Tetrapods with hair, mammary glands, double circulation, endothermic